Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I'm ready to do my full review on this chunk of a knife. This is the Kizer Sheepdog, which was loaned to me by my buddy Kyle over at DTOM Knives and Gear. He had this knife modified by Scott from Big Bore Knives and Gear, and yeah, I'm still a little bit floored that Kyle telepathically knew that I wanted to check this out because I had never mentioned it to him, and he just had a feeling that I'd enjoy seeing it, and I had been thinking about revisiting this knife. So, without going too in-depth into my history with this knife, because I kind of did that in my first impressions, I owned one of these a while back when I kind of first started collecting knives in the sense of how I collect knives now, and I only had it for a relatively brief period because I found that it was a little too fancy for me at the time, and it was a little too kind of heavy and bulky in pocket. At this point in time, the price range that this knife is in, the materials that it's using, titanium frame lock, S35VN, I wouldn't say this is too fancy for me anymore, but it is still a little on the heavy side, and I don't know that it's as useful as I really want a knife to be for me to really carry and justify having around. But let's kind of dig into it a little bit because I have some thoughts about this knife. So first of all, like I mentioned, we're working with S35VN blade steel. I'm fine with S35VN, especially at this price point. It's fine with me. We have titanium handle scales. These are certainly abnormal as they have been anodized and worked on quite a bit. So they're polished and then anodized like this. Typically, the way these come from Kizer, they're either just kind of like a blasted titanium, or they do, the one I had like a blue anodized handle, or handles, but they were kind of a lighter blue, not a really deep blue. So this is worlds different from how they look from factory. This is all of the factory equipment, however, so it's the factory clip, although I believe this is anodized as well, if I'm not crazy. And then, yeah, as you can see, the lock side is anodized. We do have a stainless steel interface with an over travel stop. So in terms of construction, titanium, S35VN, bunch more titanium, and that's kind of what we're working with. So this knife, there's a couple different sizes of it at this point. I think I neglected to mention altogether. I didn't even really think about it until after I finished filming my first impressions. But I also had a mini sheepdog. That one at the time was only available in G10 with VG10 blade steel. And so it was a liner lock with G10 scales. And that one I got shortly after getting the full-size sheepdog because I thought it'd be fun to try out a littler one. And turns out I actually liked that one better. The ergos on that one were surprisingly good for me. It was kind of a 3-finger knife, not a full 4-finger knife, but as a secondary, it was a great little blade. And I didn't even really have a reason to sell it other than I had a buddy who was looking for one, and so I sold it to my friend Kyle. Different than this Kyle. But yeah, I just kind of let go of that knife because I had gotten to a point where I wasn't carrying it as much anymore. But for a while, I carried that knife a lot. And I liked that variant of the knife. I liked the balance, the weight. The blade shape I found was actually pretty usable on that one. The blade stock was a lot thinner. But yeah, so I have had a sheepdog that I've carried a lot, even though this version I didn't carry so much. But yeah, so they make the little guy, which is what I was trying to get to. Sorry, I'm all over the place. They have the mini sheepdog, they have the sheepdog, and then there's an XL sheepdog, or a big, large sheepdog. I don't know what the terminology is for it, but there's one that's even bigger than this. And for me, I see no utility in a bigger version of this knife. It just doesn't appeal to me at all. What's interesting as well is this model has done very well for Kizer from what I've been able to perceive. I don't know 100% what the reasoning is behind that. I think a lot of it is the model. I think part of it is how much Kizer has pushed the model. Blade HQ has pushed the model a lot. And so for that reason, there's a lot of variance at this point. So there's titanium mini sheepdogs now. When I had mine, there was no titanium S35VN version of the Mini. It was just G10 and VG10. Now there's this, but smaller, like this configuration. And then they also have done some versions of this, I think, in G10. I'm not positive about the G10 ones, but just within the last like week, I've seen a bunch of micarta ones that I think use BD1N blade steel, if I'm not crazy. So there's my point is there's a bunch of options. Frankly, if I was going to get another one of these, I wouldn't get it in S35VN in titanium like this. Just the weight of this knife, I don't know. A lot of the source of that weight, frankly, is the blade. So even if this one was micarta and not titanium, I don't know how much lighter it would be, because you've still got just a big slab of blade steel, and it's ground relatively tall, so it's a reasonable thickness behind the edge. It's not that this is an unfunctional blade shape. It just feels like there's more mass here than there needs to be. And I get that that's what makes this knife cool and alluring to so many people, the kind of cleaver aspect of it. But this knife isn't a chopper. What is somebody chopping with this knife? Like, this isn't an outdoorsy knife, in my opinion, especially the titanium version and the blade steels that they're offering it and all that. I wouldn't see this knife as like a chopper. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's very capable of chopping wood, but to me, that's not where I see this knife really fitting. I think it's more like just the fun factor of it being a cleaver. And I'm not super into cleavers, if I'm being honest. I love a good Warney. I like sheep's foot blades. I like when Olamic does the sheep's foot mixed with the Warney, the sheep's cliff. Like, these types of blade shapes, or points at least, I can get behind. I like that there's just nice gradual belly here. The actual edge on it is good. The tip has enough of a point that you can pierce into material. As like an EDC blade shape, I find it quite usable. And on the Mini that I had, which was thinner blade stock and was just smaller in general, that knife was awesome for like cutting boxes and opening mail and kind of light to medium duty EDC tasks. And I just feel like this isn't going to be any better for its increased size. So I don't know. But a couple things I really like about the design. First of all, the ergos are very nice. The way that this titanium is sculpted, it's very pleasant in the hand. There are no hot spots. There's no jimping anywhere on this knife, even on the flipper tab. Everything is smooth to the touch, and I appreciate that. I like it. The ergos lock it in enough that I don't feel like I'm worried at all about this knife coming out of hand while I'm using it. That was loud, sorry. But yeah, so the ergos are quite good. In addition to that, the types of grips you can do with this blade shape, first of all, they put a little notch right up here, if you can see that little cutout. And for me, I think this is what they designed it to do, but for me, I can get this really cool kind of pinch grip where I'm grabbing here and here with these fingers, and then like I'm pressing my thumb against the blade on this side, and I can put my pointer finger up here into that notch. Come on, focus. And that gives me this really cool kind of index over the tip to like draw cut or like pull cut through material. So if I'm like cutting out something out of paper for an arts and crafts project that my daughter's doing or something, this is actually a very usable kind of ergonomic solution to being able to make a cut like that. You can also literally pinch all the way up onto the blade. So having this really nice tall blade, I can kind of use this blade for some like scraping motions and really precise little cuts and things that you couldn't do with a much thinner profile blade. So there's certainly an advantage to having a blade like this. I just don't know that I prefer it or find that those advantages would make enough of a difference to offset how heavy this knife is and how front heavy it is. It's just really, the weight is all forward because this blade is where all the weight is. Yeah, it's an interesting design and an interesting concept to have a folding cleaver, right? I don't listen to Insane Clown Posse, so I don't have this affinity towards cleavers. In fact, oftentimes, if I'm being honest, I think cleavers are pretty lame. Unless you're a butcher who's using a cleaver for the actual reasons that a cleaver is designed to be used, I don't find that it makes a more functional knife for any, really, of the knife tasks that I do. Maybe for chopping in general, but like, I'd rather have a hatchet or a tomahawk in my kit than a cleaver. I just feel like to me, there's an inherent kind of lameness to like full-on cleaver. Now this isn't like, I'm being kind of harsh, and I don't necessarily even lump that in with this. Like I said, I had the mini one and really liked it. I had this one and liked it but didn't love it. And so I don't lump this into that like lame cleaver thing that happens in my brain, because there's no like pointless hole up here, and it's not like just a totally chopped off blade, and it's still small enough that it's pocketable, and although it's pushing the boundaries, it's still a somewhat reasonable pocket knife size and weight. It's a little too far for me. Slightly, but not way too far. It's not what I would say is outside of the realm of my tastes. Like, I wouldn't be embarrassed at all to carry one of these knives. I think they look pretty good, but at this point, I'm just not into it. And I feel like for my type of cutting tasks that are common for me, which I think are probably what's common for most people, at least the EDC type cutting tasks that I do, maybe not the outdoor stuff that I do, because not everybody is out hiking all the time and stuff, I get that, but for the processing cardboard and opening packages and cutting zip ties and like random around the house little things, I don't find that there's a functional advantage to this blade shape. In fact, I think it's kind of a disadvantage. And then the real thing that has just kind of reinstilled that I don't necessarily want one of these for myself has been how it feels in pocket. Everything on it is very smooth. It goes in and out of pocket fine, and nothing on it is sharp or poking me or anything like that, but it's just really heavy. And I don't know, I've carried knives heavier than this that have a way about the way they sit in pocket that doesn't make them feel as annoying, but something about this one, maybe it's because it's in summer and I'm in shorts more or something, but it has this tendency to like kind of slap against my leg, and I don't like that. I feel like I can feel that it's there more than I can other knives that are even heavier than it is. So it's just a little bit less than ideal for me in pocket. All of that said, I want to reiterate, this is not a bad knife. It cuts quite well. It gets reasonably thin behind the edge. It's a decent blade steel. It's a decent handle material. Like, the build quality is nice. The action is a lot of fun. It's very smooth and drop shutty. In fact, with all that weight up there, it's very, very drop shutty. And it's just like, it's a nice, well-made piece. It really is. It's just not for me. And I think that's fair to say. There are certainly more knives than this one that are outside of my current tastes. And I'm glad that I gave it another shot, because I genuinely was wondering whether I would like this knife having it now compared to when I had it the first time. The answer is no, but it was worth kind of figuring out again and seeing if I'd come full circle on it. So I guess that'll be that. Anyway, this is the Kizer Sheepdog. Thank you again to my buddy Kyle for loaning it to me. He will, of course, be linked down below. And yeah, the finishing work on this one, by the way, from Scott over at Big Board Knife and Gear is amazing. So I don't know if Scott does that all the time, if he's like into knife modding. I should be better friends with Scott. I feel like we have so many mutual friends. It's not that I'm not friends with Scott, but like I just don't know him as well as a lot of my friends know him. Anyways, I would imagine this is something that he could do for people if you're interested in it. So check him out. I'll link to his channel down below as well. But yeah, there you have it. This is the Kizer Sheepdog, and that'll be my full review on it.